gaan op de... hier? Nee? Ja, ja, ja. Over de digitale index, hè, waar wij schandalig geplaatst zijn op plaats nummer 9. Over
Donc, De Backer est là. Ah, parfait. De Backer est là. Il est là. Excellent. Juste le recteur. Au cas où le recteur n'est pas là, on fasse ce qu'on est là. Are we ready? Can we start? Last time I was in a presentation like that. This is being recorded, so at the end of each presentation you have to clap, and we will see now if you can clap. And then everybody clap. Go on. And then there was something with the joke, and I didn't understand that one. So we are ready to start. The streaming is going to start in a second. We are still expecting to see speakers, but everything is here to start. So. No? Oh, yes.
This has been the sledgehammer I was looking for to break down walls, big and small, walls in our head, walls amongst people, walls amongst continents. I have seen university professors speak with normal people and business people. This is what I was looking for. Should we do it again next year? I think so, huh? Note the date, 26th of June 2019. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for being here. The 26th of June 2019. You wanted it. You asked for it. We listened to you. So here we are today, the 26th of June 2019, all together again. So, meneer de minister De Backer, monsieur le recteur de l'ULB, professors, researchers, executives, entrepreneurs, students, passionate, esteemed guests, welcome. A very warm, it's going to be very warm welcome to the 5th annual conference of the AI4Belgium and Datascience community. My name is Claudio Truzzi. I am responsible for digital innovation at the Technology Transfer Office at the ULB. And I am also responsible for the Icity.Brussels program, which is a structural partner of this event. What is a structural partner, you may ask? Well, in practical terms, Icity.Brussels is offering to you, to all of us, this extraordinary location. It takes care of our security, of our safety. It allows you to send that all-important tweet thanks to a professional Wi-Fi network, and it captures and streams online the entire event real-time for you and for all of us. How comes that Icity.Brussels can do all that? Where do the funds come from? Icity.Brussels is an initiative from ULB, VUB series, and just a second. Okay, here. ULB, VUB series. Can I get some water, please? Can somebody bring me some water? Probably, yes. Okay. The funds come, it is funded by the European Regional Development Fund, by Noviris. Thank you. What a service. Yeah, we need the applause. We need the applause. Thank you. It's all too stressful. Sorry for that. The objective of Icity.Brussels is to boost digital development in Brussels. Sorry. Is to boost digital development in Brussels by 20% by 2020. And so, as I said, it's okay? Yeah, that's the beauty of direct things. Okay. So we need to take a moment to consider and thank the European Union, the region of Brussels, ULB and VUB, to give us back with this event a fraction of our dearly paid tax euros, yours and mine. And I think with this event, this is really with a great value add return on investment. However, this event would have not been possible without the help of our other structural partners, Accenture Digital, HUB.Brussels, AI4Belgium and Digityser, and also with the help of our sponsors, the Platinum partners, Omina Technologies, Microsoft, PwC, Dell Technologies, TIPCO, and also all our gold partners and silver partners. I also would like to thank, and also I would like you to thank the organizing teams, both at Digityser and at the ULB, who have gone many miles, many extra miles in order to be able to put everything together today for you and for us. And I also would like to thank you as community members, because this is your event. So make it yours. Make sure that you participate, you network, you do your work, your homework, get together, share ideas, invent new things, because this is what it is all about. This event would be totally useless without you. And last but not least, and I would say last but first, nothing of this would have been possible without our dear community captain, our Brussels digital flagship admiral, our data for good captain-in-chief, my dearest friend, Philippe Van Impe. Please welcome him on board.
So good morning, everyone. Let's make it a community event. Let's make sure that you use every single minute that you have to connect with people, share your experience, learn things. This is why we organize this event. This is what we do as a community. We make sure that people get together and share their experience. To do that, this year we have prepared an application for you, an app, sorry. And the app, you can download the app, and you wouldn't be able to download the app without the possibility to get on the network, on the Wi-Fi network. So at the back of your name tag, there is the Wi-Fi access. Yeah? So make sure you get on the Wi-Fi and make sure you start downloading the app, because everything this year is digital. My daughter has not worked 5 days to produce a brochure this year, so unfortunately, it's all digital. And on this app, you'll be able to post comments, meet people, and vote for the AI awards. We have prepared nice awards in 3 categories. One category will be the AI Personality of the Year. Get on the app, vote for the AI Personality of the Year. The other one is the AI Startup of the Year. Same thing. And the third one is the Scale Up of the Year. We are assisted by Collibra and Stan, my friend Stan, who will be coaching the Startup and the Scale Up event this afternoon. There are a lot of interesting talks, All the talks are available on your app, but I would like to pinpoint a few of them. We have, this afternoon, some interesting workshops. So the workshops are 1 hour slots where you will be able to learn something, a technology, to go in depth on one of the topics. So make sure you go there. So these workshops are taking place on the 3rd and on the 4th floor here. Yeah. So on the 4th floor, it's more the very technical stuff, and on the 3rd floor is the very business management style stuff. Yeah. Check the app. That's all I wanted to say. So if you all agree, let's start this day. Do you agree? Can we start? Okay, let's start. Let me introduce you to Els Amper. Els Amper is going to be our guide in the first part of this event.
Good morning, everybody. Are you all feeling very good or extremely good? Extremely good, that's a good thing. So first of all, today it will all be about artificial intelligence and how humans will cope with it. And that's why I'm really happy to announce you that we have someone in our midst who knows everything about human reproduction. And actually, he's an expert in it. He's a doctor honoris causa at the University of Thessaloniki, and he's the president of the National Council of Scientific Research in Belgium. And moreover, he's a big fan of Brussels and its students. Actually, I'm speaking about the director of this university, of my university. Please welcome Yvon Englert.
So welcome everybody at ULB. I'm really happy to be able for the second time to host this nice and stimulating event to look to the future with the eyes also of the university. It means to look to artificial intelligence in relation to the humans, in relation to our values, in relation to a better world for tomorrow. And this is not an easy challenge. And I'm really happy, and I would like to thank you to be here, to share that. I see an ambition of a lot of interaction. It means that you will be able to construct also this future. Our university is a large university in Brussels with a lot of international students, with research of long investment in artificial intelligence, and with some quite strong groups also in big data who are extremely linked to the possibility to develop the artificial intelligence. You have a few of our figures coming on the slides. I would like also to stress that we are in partnership with our sister university, VUB, Vrije Universiteit Brussels, on these events, like in a lot of our today's activities. The rector of the VUB should be here today. She was planned to be with us. Maybe some of you have read the press communique who announced health serious problems who make her unable to be here. So I would like to ask you a big applause to send to her our strength for recovery. You know that Caroline is extremely involved in the subject of today. She is extremely committed to the development of AI in Brussels, like to develop a hub where a lot of the forces who are present in our country at the different level, at the level of the federal government, at the level of the regions, at the level of the communities, because the university are places who have to take their part in the development, but also in the reflection of the nice integration of AI in our 21st century. We have seen, and even very recently, that there is also a dark side of these technologies, fake news, cyber attack, who were at the front of the news in the last days. So we have to be aware that the technologies are to be used with a background of reflection about how to make the world better with them and not worse. And I'm sure that you will be devoted to do that in this event. Welcome at ULB. You are here at your home because the home of science is an open home, and I'm sure you will have very stimulating days. Thanks to the organizers to have make their efforts to be able to host this event at ULB. Have a nice day.
This home of science has a lot of great researchers, and one of them is Tom Lenaerts. He will be speaking about human emotions. And so, Tom Lenaerts, the floor is yours.
Perfect. So, if the slides are going to appear, we can get started. So good morning, everybody. And I'd like to thank Philippe and Claudio again to invite me to give another presentation this year at the DI Summit. It's a very nice place to be, and a lot of interesting people are walking around here, and I see the room is getting quite full again like last year, which is very nice. So I'm not going to talk about, again, like last year, what is AI and what should you know about AI. Actually, I'm going to leave you with a question, and the question is on the slide. And you have the entire day to reflect on it, and you have this nice app which you can use to argue about it. So I'm asking the question here, do we need to provide our AI systems with moral emotions? And when I'm talking about AI systems, I'm not talking about your data mining or data science project. I'm talking about the full circle, detecting patterns, using those patterns to make decisions, and then taking actions in the world. That's actually a full circle for an AI system. And so why do I talk about this particular question? It was because Philippe asked me to give a presentation at the DI Summit dinner 2 weeks ago, or more or less, I think. And I said, okay, what am I going to do? And I looked at the poster, and like I was pointing out already, there was this nice sentence saying, being human in the age of AI. And so this made me thinking, and you're probably going to hear a lot of thinking about this question during the day. And most people will reflect on this in the sense that, okay, what does this new technology have to do with me, with my life? So they will ask questions about impact on themselves as a person. And like we heard before here, AI is very useful, for instance, in the context of health, in bioinformatics, because you need intelligent techniques to make sense of that data and to identify patterns that lead to disease, or maybe to make diagnosis of skin cancer and all these kind of things, which is quite important for you as a person. But it also affects maybe your work. People are doing certain jobs nowadays which are involve a lot of repetition. So these repetitive tasks might disappear as soon as you have technology that can replace particularly those tasks. But also relationships, and this is a bit maybe some people recognize from their kids that prefer to sit in the room playing on their PS4 or playing with a robot or playing with their smartphone instead of going and play outside with their other kids in the world. So it actually affects how we make relationships and how we do this kind of things. But also on society, democracy is actually influenced by all these new technologies. And like we had all these discussions about, did Russia influence the American elections, yes or no, and all these kind of things by using by using novel technologies. And also environment, how can AI, for instance, help in solving this climate change question that many people are thinking about. These are all important questions, and they're also linked to ideas of imposing rules and ethical norms on how to behave and how to handle this technology. And a lot of talks, I guess, today will be about that. But I want to go a little bit deeper. I want to maybe say, okay, essentially this sentence boils down to an age-old question, which is what makes us human? And most of the time, religion tries to answer this question, science is trying to answer this question, but most of the time it's actually asked when our position as a human being is being put into question. Like when Darwin proposed his theory of natural selection and evolution, suddenly the human was not anymore above the natural world, it was part of the natural world. And you had a link directly with apes and with primates. And so people were wondering, okay, but this cannot be true, how can this work? We are superior, in the end we are not superior, just one of the species on the planet. And you get this kind of mockery reactions from people. But also for AI, you can ask the same question. I'm not going to talk about singularity because I'm not convinced of those kind of things, but some people are convinced that some AI systems might become more intelligent than us, might actually put our own us being humans into question, and then this question pops up again. How do you actually put yourself in the context of this new technology? What is still our use in society? And I don't want to go into that direction because I'm not completely convinced of that. But what is also interesting on that question is if you ask the question, what makes us human, you can use that to understand, okay, what do I need to put in a system to make it intelligent? If I focus on the cognitive aspects, what kind of requirements does my system need so that other people recognize it as intelligent? It's not sufficient to say that you're good in playing Go or good in detecting certain things because that's simply data analysis. But what is the question here of intelligence? And so this question has been investigated by scientists for a very long time again, and there was this nice book recently by Thomas Suddendorf who actually looks at what are the cognitive differences between primates and human beings. And his main conclusion was that we can think about all of the alternative futures and act accordingly. So essentially it comes down to we can imagine. We can imagine that what would have happened if we would not have taken this morning the action to take the car to come to Brussels, but I would have taken the train. Would have been in time, not in time. We can reason about this kind of things, which seems to require imagination, and which is called actually counterfactual reasoning in science. But this idea that Thomas Suddendorf put actually in his book is not that novel because you have many people who are working in AI research already asking what is the difference between what is intelligence, what's the difference with primates, what kind of mechanisms are actually necessary to make an intelligent system. And Judea Pearl was one of the important people in that context, and he was at the basis of Bayesian networks as one of the key technologies in artificial intelligence research. But he also puts in the context of his new book, he puts also forward that to make truly intelligent machines, it's not enough to learn the patterns in the data. You need to learn them, the relationship between a cause and an effect. And if you learn the relationship between a cause and effect, then actually you can think about what would have happened if I would have done something differently. And you can ask what-if questions, and you can actually have a system that can actually imagine things and act accordingly. So essentially it comes down to the idea that a system, if it has this way of thinking, it needs to be able to reflect about things. So it needs to be able to do self-reflection. And this self-reflection is not only important to make intelligent machines, this self-reflection is also important because systems that don't have that capacity cannot be bound in social contracts and cannot take moral responsibility. So this is interesting. So if you want to make an AI system, we can invent ethical rules like many organizations are doing now on how to work with this technology. But since AI is inherently predictive, so you cannot control for all the mistakes it's going to make, right? You might want to put your ethical rules into the AI system. Yeah? So if you don't give this AI system the capacity to reason about what it did wrong and how it can improve itself, then it cannot be bound into a social contract. It means we'll have difficulties interacting with us on a daily basis for a long period of time, and it will not be able to take moral responsibility for its action. It will not be able to say, sorry, I made a mistake, okay? Or I will do better next time, for instance. So if we want to do that, what actually do we need? And then we can go back to us humans, and we can say, how did evolution solve that problem? What we have is emotions, and our emotions actually give us the capacity to self-reflect. And not only fear, anger, and greed, and all these kind of things, and jealousy and stuff like that, but actually the self-conscious or the moral or social emotions that we have. And these are, for instance, guilt, shame, embarrassment, pride, and these actually drive our decision-making. Because if I feel guilty about something, I will not take the same action again the next time. I say, oh, I did something wrong. I should avoid doing that thing the next time I'm in the same situation. So, does that make sense from an AI perspective? I can say, yes, we built some simulations, some models to actually investigate. Okay, imagine that you have a multi-agent system solving some problem for you where mistakes can be made in this kind of system. What would it mean that the system can self-reflect, feel guilty, but that's okay, that's the term we give to it, but simply self-reflecting about what it did and how it changes its state. And then we see that in that context where you can decide either to be cooperative or you can cheat and be defective, if these agents have a system that's similar to guilt, they actually are way more cooperative and produce longer stable interactions between in a society of multiple agents. Okay? On top of that, because the system can think about what-if questions, it can think about, if I take that action, maybe I'm going to feel guilty afterwards. Maybe I'm going to end up in a state that is actually wrong. So maybe I should avoid that particular kind of state, which we call anticipation. Or if it did an action and it suddenly discovers, oh, something is wrong here, it can actually think, what would have happened if I would have taken another action, which is counterfactual reasoning in this system. So it's a form of self-debugging, and it allows the system to try to make normative and correct and morally correct actions. Exactly what we expect from people when we interact from them. So should we expect that from agent systems also? And it's also our own need, because imagine that these agents or these robots are interacting with you on a daily basis and they're performing in an intelligent manner. And I'm talking again about these full AI systems. You expect you want to use your social skills to interact with those systems. You want to be able to know the usage that you know the best, to make sure that you have a long-term and stable and mutually beneficial relationship with those systems, because otherwise, why would you still want to use them? And maybe emotions and using these kind of things can help in making the systems more acceptable. So, to conclude, and this is the question I give for you today, do we expect the same from our AI system in the wild? Would you trust more or less an AI system that can feel guilt, like we feel guilt, that actually uses a system like emotions to interact with you and to correct its behavior if something was done wrong, or would you simply turn off the button if something went wrong with that system? And do we wish to cooperate more with a system that has that capacity, or do we actually prefer to work with the current technology that we have, which is simply following a fixed set of rules that we specify up front, and actually does not show any intelligence. It's just a good pattern detector that gives you some correlations within the data that you're analyzing. And that's my finish. I finished early? No. Thank you very much.
The next speaker, his Twitter account says that he has a passion for technology, politics, jazz, cycling, chess, fun, and most of all, people, because they make a difference. So you have a lot of passions. That's very interesting. And he was an editor-in-chief of Data News, and he will now be the critical voice on artificial intelligence. Please welcome Luc Blyaert.
Thank you. Hi everyone, morning. Let's get some fire in the room here. It's all about change, you know. I left home when I was 17. I was 17 when I left my dad, kids' comfort zone because I wanted to change. And I went to Rome. I lived with hookers, with prostitutes, with soldiers, fallen soldiers, and a lot of creepy people. And that was the time of my life, you know. That was in the 70s. There was no email. There was no social media. There was no Twitter, no Facebook, no Instagram. There was no Netflix. We had about half a day more than now. 3-4 hours a day. That was the time. We only had some communications going on face to face, hoping that everything went good. Now, what we see nowadays, that there's a lot of information coming in. Trivial news, fake news, no news. That we spend hours a day, hours a week, spending on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, and that the knowledge is not going further. That's why I'm so happy that there is the DiSummit, and thank Philippe for having me here. Now, what's going on here in Belgium? It looks like it's really standstill. The politicians don't know what's happening in digital. They don't know what's going on in artificial intelligence. They don't know, they don't have a clue. I hope Philippe will come on that later. This looks like we got to stand still, you know, that we're still waiting for Godot here in Belgium. We are lagging behind. When our government came in 5 years ago, there was a big promise of change, that things were going to change. What happened? Almost nothing. We were in the digital economy and societal index, the DAISY index from the European Commission. We were on place number 5 in that time, 2014. And there was one big KPI from our Minister of Digitalization. We want to be in the top 3, which is a good thing, right? Year after we tumbled to place number 7. 2016, again place number 7. 2018, my God, place number 9. What's happening in Belgium? And then they said, okay, that's something wrong. The figures were wrong, we have to change that. In 2019, that will change. And what happened in 2019, we stayed at place number 9. How comes in Belgium? It's so sad. So what happened? All the digital minds here going on, they were just partying or so? Were they just having some fun? The government services, digital government service, Belgium is on place number 12 in Europe. My God, what's happening? It looks like they're just doing nothing in the government. It's you, probably, sending an email. It's a shame, I tell you, it's a shame. It's a shame. We should change that one. We should go for new things. We should be creative, innovative. And I hope you all are working on that. That's something we got to change. 5G, something else. That's terrible, isn't it? They are testing now here with about 750 meg with 1.5 gig. But it's not only about connection, it's about Internet of Things, it's about artificial intelligence. It's about connecting, it's about driverless cars, it's about drones, it's about change in our government and change in our society. I hope government will change. What did we have here in Belgium? You know, all different regions that don't talk to each other. Brussels, Flanders, Walloon. They were just discussing about the money. How much money they could get from the licenses. And Flanders said, we need more money. And Walloon said, no, the money is for us. And Brussels went in between. This is a terrible thing. They don't talk to each other. So what did they said actually to you guys, to you youngsters here in the room? They said, fuck you all, you know. And that's our future. In Holland, they will start next year. In Germany, all the ports are going on with 5G. And we are not ready on a license yet. It will be not this year. It will be probably not next year. Probably in 21 or 22. We're lagging behind. That's terrible. Shame. Shame again. We have to change it. Be innovative. Be creative. And push the government. Push them. Write them. Send them emails. Phone them. SMS them. Whatever. And what happens when something goes not that good? They're just throwing some money about it. Mr. Mutters, he said he will give 30 million a year, 30 million euro a year to artificial intelligence. Is that a lot? You know, Macron in Paris, France is giving 330 million euros a year just to check artificial intelligence. 10 times more than Belgium. We want to play a role there in artificial intelligence. We want to do something. The more they give the money always to the same institution. This is the most ugly tower in Belgium. You know, it's IMEC in Leuven. You can't imagine how they should kill the architect. You know, so terrible. they got, we do pay them every year 100 million euros from your and my pocket. That's about 1/5 of their revenue. What do they do with that? They give all the knowledge to Samsung, to Huawei, to Intel, all the other semiconductors. But do we see something from it, from IMEC? As a student, as a KMO, as a small company, as a big company? No, we don't see anything at all. 100 million subsidized. So it's time for a wake-up call. You know, it's time for a wake-up call. For the politicians, for the regions, for everybody in Belgium. They should wake up. Because the deadline is coming up very quickly. And all other people are just coming over us. There's just jumping. We're just staying there. You know, there's nothing happening here. And France is going over us. China is going over us. For those who weren't related to China, they're going very, very, very fast. And they got a vision. I hope the Belgian government and the regions will have a vision by the end of the year or whatever. So time for a change. Time for a change. To knock, and this is my last one and my favorite one. Oh, sorry. Just scrap the nothing on your to-do list, you know. Do something about it. Be creative, be innovative, jump on it, and have a good day. Thank you very much.
Would now like to introduce you to a very extraordinary member of the Belgian government. Yes, a politician who has a clue. Imagine that, Luc. He's a doctor in biotechnology, so genes and molecules have no secrets for him. He claims to be a responsible rebel. That's what is written on his website. Please welcome our Secretary of State in charge of privacy, telecom, digitalization, Philippe De Backer.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Luc, you spent your younger years with hookers and crooks. I spent 10 years in politics. It's more or less the same, no? I actually agree on a lot of things that you said, but we have a strategy here fixing it all. One comment I would like to make is indeed on the 5G, because my presentation is not about 5G, but that, for me, is still a crucial file on the table of all our governments. And I think your analysis is right. The analysis is that there is not enough understanding of what impact that technologies like 5G or AI will have on our societies, which roles we can play as knowledge institutions, companies, but also governments, in order to streamline and to advance this process and make sure that indeed Europe can, at this moment, catch up and take the lead again in these new technologies. And especially for 5G, for me it was a personal disappointment. It was a personal disappointment because politics is there to help people, to build an economy, to grow an economy, to make it better for everybody. And if then these kind of big important files get stuck down because of this discussion about the division of money, it shows a little bit also the state of our current politics. It shows that we sometimes lack the understanding of our current world, we lack the vision to move forward as a country in that world, and it shows also that in the end, some politicians are more concerned with their ideology than with bringing the wealth and the health of people forward. So that was just a little statement concurring with you, what you were saying. But I was here asked today to talk a little bit about our AI4Belgium strategy. It is something I think it is something that brings everybody together. That's the essence of AI4Belgium. We have a lot of capacities, we have a lot of talent, we have a lot of institutions already involved in AI, but we don't know it. It's incoherent, there is no strategy. So the idea for AI4Belgium is really to bring everybody together, to streamline a strategy and to make sure that in the end we also deliver on that strategy. We did a little survey with people because, of course, public understanding is something that is important. 30% of people don't know what AI is. I'm not sure that the other 71% will answer right if you ask more concrete questions, but at least 30% doesn't know or doesn't know anything about AI. So this is a worrying figure. It's something that will, today already AI is present in many of the applications that we use. People just don't know it. And so we really need to demystify AI. We need to show what AI today is already capable of, already doing, where it is present, but also to show what the possibilities are and where we are taking AI in order to improve our society. So this is for me a figure that shows that we still need to do a lot of effort in that respect. When you ask people, do you see AI as something positive, a lot of people say yes. And the more people say they understand and know about AI, the more positive they become. So it's again an incentive to move forward and to make sure that we inform people, that the information is out there, that they understand what we are doing, how it is going, and what will happen in the next couple of years. So this is a little survey that we did, but of course, we also asked, and this is also part of many presentations that we will see today, what impact does AI? How do you feel about AI? What are some of the thoughts about AI? And of course, people are worried also. They're worried about their privacy, how their data will be handled, how data is going to be secured. Will there be less human interaction, like the previous presenter said? Loss of control to AI and to robots. So all these feelings, all these emotions are also present. And it's something also where politicians, policymakers, but also scientists should be aware of, because it is often these emotions which are used to put AI in a bad daylight and to block certain applications of AI. I was in a panel yesterday with the European Commission, and I think today Europe will present a paper on cybersecurity, AI, and other aspects. But we cannot make the same mistake as in the past. What Europe often does is to regulate the technology and not the applications of the technology. So we should really focus on certain red lines, certain things we don't want. Facial recognitions coupled with a social score in order to get loans with the bank. We don't want that. So talk about these things, but don't talk or regulate or hamper or block the technology that is being used to do that. So the research should be free, the application should be part of a societal and a political debate. And these elements are, of course, very much important. So why are we caring about AI? We know that AI will have a huge impact on our societies at large. It will improve, or it has the possibility to improve, our quality of life. It has the possibility to changing a job market. Maybe we focus a little bit too much on jobs. We should maybe focus a little bit more on the tasks of those jobs. That will change, fundamentally change. It's not because there's a Google Assistant that the secretary or the PA is obsolete. No, she will use the technology to do her job better and have more time to do other things. But this requires, of course, a reskilling and retraining of people. Our values, what's at the core indeed of being human? What are our core societal values? AI also gives the opportunity to discuss these kind of things. It will provide economic growth. It will be a huge driver of economic growth. I think other countries already understood this. France, Germany are investing a lot of money in AI. China, the US also. So we cannot lag behind. And as a small country, we should find partners also, especially at the European level. Our position in the world. If other countries are doing more, what does that mean for us? How will we continue to develop as a country? How will we make sure that tomorrow the well-being of our citizens is guaranteed? And of course, all the innovations, technologies, how do you keep that here? How do you make sure that it is used? How do you make sure that SMEs are using that, not only the larger corporations? So all these aspects of AI have to be touched upon, have to be part of an overarching strategy. And we brought everybody together. We still are open for people who want to join the coalition. These are the people who actually were the first ones to join us. But we have over 250 experts in Belgium and abroad, Belgians abroad, who have joined this coalition and setting it up. It's not a government paper. It is a strategy, it is a vision developed by the experts themselves. And so we are continuously looking for new inputs to make sure that we capture all the knowledge, all the information that is out there in order to fine-tune the strategy, in order to set the strategy for the next couple of years, and indeed to bring everybody together. What do you want to do? What are the aims of the AI4Belgium coalition? First of all, put AI and digitalization in general higher on the political agenda. There was a CEO of one of the biggest companies yesterday in the panel who said, actually, the Minister for Digitalization should be the Prime Minister. It's the only way that it becomes a top priority for the whole government, for every government in Belgium, and we do have a lot of governments, maybe we should apply some AI there also. But it should be top of the political agenda. It touches on so many aspects of our future that it should be a top priority. Have it in the public debate. Don't do it behind closed doors. Make sure that people get involved, that people can have an opinion, that the demystification process can start. Encourage human-centered AI. There's a lot of discussion about ethical AI. for me, it's about also doing it, making sure that the applications in AI that are today developed, that we adhere to ethical standards. It's sometimes easier to get funding to do an ethical project about AI than to do AI itself. We should start with doing AI itself in an ethical context. The two go hand in hand, but we should do it. And of course, build further on this coalition and to make sure that we really start implementing also the strategy. It's not only about a nice presentation, it's not only about nice words, it's also about making sure that it gets implemented. And yes, we have a complex structure of our country, but everybody should be aware, all political stakeholders, all stakeholders in the private sector, all stakeholders in academia should understand that AI and digitalization should be at the core of what we are going to do over the next couple of years. And of course, we have concrete measures also. We have to focus. We cannot do everything. So we have to focus and make choices in where we're going to put the focus. First of all, a new learning deal. We know that AI will have a huge impact on the job market, on the skills of people, so we need to invest more in training and retraining of people. It starts at a young age. It's not only about coding and the hard part of AI, the hard skills of AI, also on the soft skills. So there we should really reach a new learning deal. Develop a responsible data strategy, but also an open data strategy, making sure that data can be used to do research and to develop new applications. Support adoption of AI in the private sector, especially for smaller companies. We still have a long way to go. So also there we can give a push, bringing everybody together or getting the knowledge out, but also pushing AI and making sure that everybody has knowledge of this technology and starts to use it. Innovation. Luc already talked about it. IMEC is only one example. For example, in Antwerp, we have the Beacon. We try to bring everybody together also in these kind of environments, public and private, to make sure that innovation doesn't stay on the shelf, but really comes to the market more quickly than today. And that's an issue, because we often over-engineer. We have to test it much faster in the market to see and get feedback. And of course, improve our public services. There's one aspect of the DAISY index that's strange. If you automate a full process in the public sector, it's considered not relevant for the index. If you ask people to fill in forms online, then you are digitalization. So that's something strange, but there is a huge room of improvement for our public services, also using new technologies and helping SMEs, for example, to test their programs very quickly. So those are some of the concrete measures that we have. We are expanding it into a think tank, but also to a do tank, and I invite everybody who can to join. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a very interesting day. Thank you.
Now, how will we shape the future of work in this age of artificial intelligence? That's the question who will be answered by Ferdinand Casier. He's a member of Agoria, the Federation of Technological Companies in Belgium. So please, Ferdinand, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning everyone. So I am Ferdinand Casier from Agoria, the Belgian Federation of the Technology Industry. Just a small recap, we represent different industries. You see them on the slide behind me. And I work more for the digital industries within Agoria. Good. Jobs, jobs, jobs. I think you all heard this mantra quite a few times the last 4 years, and it's quite normal. But in being human in the age of AI, we think also we have to look at the type of jobs. I think we all agree here in this room that the digitization of our society, of the private sector, the companies, and the public sector will have a huge impact on our jobs. But the question is, to what extent, for which jobs, which competences? And that's why at Agoria we started last year a survey together with VDAB, Actiris, and Forem to analyze the demand for work, the required competences, and also the available workforce and competences. And this between 2016 and 2030. So it's a real in-depth analysis quantitative and qualitative analysis that allows us to use a kind of matching algorithm to map out the optimal distribution of the labor supply and demand. So let's have a look. I have only 3 slides from the survey. The first slide for the demand side. We need to remember this figure, 4,777,000 demand for labor in 2016. Then you see the evolution up to 2030. We have estimated about 5,406,000 demand for labor. Of course, we will have job losses, 235,000, but we estimated a job gain of 864,000 jobs, meaning a positive delta of 629,000 jobs. This means that for one job that disappears, we could create around 3.7 new jobs. That's the potential. Okay, that's for the demand side. Let's have a look at the supply side, meaning the workforce that is available and the competences that are available on the labor market. In 2016, we have 4.9 million. So employment and unemployment. For unemployment, it's unemployment less than 1 year. And then we see the evolution in 2030 to 5,070,000. So of course, some people will retire, 1.6. Students will leave school and be available for the labor market, 1.7. We will have migration, 160,000, and also 50,000 that will leave the labor market for diverse reasons. So if you have an analytical mind, you can see the point. The first slide, 4.7 to 5.4. The second slide, 4.9 to 5.077. Meaning these 2 lines, they will cross each other. And this will be for the first time, we think, in Belgium around 2021, 2022. Meaning that we will have at that time as many demand for labor in the Belgian labor market than available workforce on the labor market. And then this gap will grow more and more up to 2030. And I will do a side comment on the figures after this explanation, but we will have about 500, I will go back here. Yes, we will have about 584,000 jobs, actually 584,000 unfilled vacancies at the end of 2030. Unfilled vacancies. This is almost 95 billion euro GDP for Belgium that we could lose. Now the side comment on these figures is with the assumption that no new measures are taken by our government to cope with this situation. So if no new measures are taken, we will have this kind of situation. And of course we hope that some measures will come, but it gives an idea of the evolution of the labor market. It's also good, I think, to have a small view on which sectors will be impacted by the digitization of our society. And of course, we can see education and healthcare and service sector. These are the 3 sectors who will need the more extra people up to between now and 2030. What can we do? Because it's good to have figures, but now action. We have to work on upgrading, retraining, activation, and productivity. These are really the 4 strategies that we really should work on. Upgrading is actually upskilling. I think we all agree we have to upskill almost all employees in Belgium to remain relevant with their in the labor market of the future. What we will do at Agoria, we will work now, we are preparing a kind of expected competency profile. And we will make it available at the end of the year to all companies, to all professionals, so that they can estimate the level of digital competences they have to acquire to remain relevant. So that's for upskilling. Quite normal, I think. Retraining, this is more for the people who will lose their jobs. This means that these people will need more in-depth retraining. But from the survey, we know which profiles will disappear, and we know also which competences are the most promising, or which profiles are the most promising in the future. So we can really map the two figures to have an ideal distribution. What we suggest there is to encourage companies to decrease the productivity of these employees in their company, so that they have more time to retrain. And by doing this, of course, they will also work on the sustainability of their company in the future, of course. That's for retraining. Activation, as one example, I can give the example of the needs. You all know the needs, the not in employment, education, and training. There are a lot of actions also in Belgium. We have B-Code, we have School 19, we have the boot camps of Philippe also. So different initiatives. We need for these people short and powerful trainings. And then the last strategy we can work on is productivity, meaning we can use technology to high the impact, like we can use technology to support people to execute their job by cobots, by chatbots, and so on. But we can also use AI to reduce, or digitization in general, to augment the productivity. I will go there, up here. To augment the productivity of these, for example, 2 or 3 sectors that are quite low in the productivity zone. If we augment their productivity by digitization, it's not easy because it's healthcare and it's education, but we need to work on these sectors to avoid that they are just with this huge problem of not finding the right people anymore. So to conclude, I would like to share also that we have seen that there is really an evolution on the labor market from contracts and profiles more to projects and more roles. So really less and less people are under a contract and more are under a project, meaning that we won't have anymore a job guarantee, but more and more a career guarantee. As you know, when you see the trend, we will have enough jobs, so it's more a career guarantee. And that's where AI also could play an important role, is to find the right match between the labor market, the competences, and the available projects. So I hope this insights could help you to build your opinion on the labor market of the future. If you are interested in that survey, we have on the booth of Agoria there in the back a little booklet on the survey with all the figures. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, how is law interacting with artificial intelligence? How can regulation be useful? These questions will be answered by Lorelien Hoet. She's a lawyer, and she's also the Director of Government Affairs of Microsoft. So she is the right person to answer all the questions about artificial intelligence, ethics, and regulation. Please welcome Lorelien Hoet.
Thank you. Okay, we're going a bit back. No, yes. So, no wonder that we're speaking today about AI ethics and regulation, because you all know that AI can bring great benefits to our society, but it also brings challenges. And I've listed a couple of them here. Issues of fake news, self-driving cars. We don't have to speak about it. So obviously, we as a company, since our cloud services offer the possibility for companies to do AI, but we also offer like AI enablers, like natural language processing tools or facial recognition tools. Of course, we have to think about this. So that is why we have developed a framework of 6 principles that we believe should be surrounding AI. And you see them listed here, all of them. And what I'll do now in the next minutes is I'll go over each of them and try to explain very briefly, because you'll be hearing more about this in the rest of the day, why we think these principles are important. I'll start with reliability and safety. Of course, we want products to be reliable, and that is also so for AI-based products. And the thing with AI, as you know, is that in order for an AI tool to be able to make predictions, you first need to train a model. And this training requires that you input it with training data. So the quality and the quantity of the training data is of huge importance for the quality of the AI tools afterwards. So that is why a couple of researchers have come up, and some Microsoft researchers as well, have come up with this idea that for each data application that we launch, we should actually have a data sheet that documents the data set, which, why, how, and so on. And that already will oblige computer scientists to think about the quality of the data, maybe more. Testing is important. We see that organizations like ISO are working on standards. Feedback loop are important. All those things are things that need to be thought of. Second principle is fairness. Fairness in AI is a lot about avoiding bias. Bias are these errors that give you wrong results. There are different reasons for bias. The first one can be non-qualitative data, as in the first slide. And for example, we know that the facial recognition tools, especially the early ones, but still today there is a problem, work much better for white colored men than for the group of women there in the back right corner. And the two middle groups, like the colored-skinned men and the white women, they are somehow in between. Why is that? To a large extent, because of the quality of the data. If you look on the internet, no surprise, there are much more pictures of white men than of colored-skinned women. So that's the thing we need to think of. Minority groups need special attention to avoid problems of fairness. But even with perfect data, AI systems can make allocation mistakes. For example, hiring algorithms, if you look for a CEO or for a computer scientist, the chance is very big that the system will recommend you a male just because it has learned that CEOs and computer scientists are usually men. So that's also a thing we need to think about. It's very important to avoid those kind of biases so that we input the right values in the AI tools from the beginning. The third principle is inclusiveness. Sorry, I went too quick here. And it's actually like a special application of fairness. If we have spoken about the colored-skinned women, the gender bias in hiring algorithms, we have a human bias, we know that. And with minority group, we must make sure that the human bias that is already there is not aggravated, but is compensated by the AI systems. And that's why we think this principle of inclusiveness is very important. The fourth principle, no surprise, Philippe De Backer has mentioned it, is privacy and security. We are speaking about data, and when you deal with personal data, obviously there are privacy laws that applies. The most famous one is obviously the GDPR. It has limitations, but it offers also some flexibilities, and we need to carefully look at this. We think it is very important that we start a dialogue, a mature dialogue, with authorities like the new Privacy Commission, Gegevensbeschermingsautoriteit, to see how we can reconcile those needs of data privacy, but also innovative applications. The thing I want to say about privacy is also that it's very use case sensitive. For example, if you and me, we may be willing to share our health data if we know that it's used for medical research to prevent people from getting ill or to detect early illnesses. But that same health data we may not be willing to share with our employer or our insurance company. So privacy is one thing, but the use case is also very important. Next, principle is transparency. And obviously, when AI systems take decisions that impact humans, transparency is crucial. You want to know on the basis of which factor a decision that impacts you is based. In the US, we have already some case law about that. For example, there is this famous Idaho case where there was a health authority that from one day to another had decreased the compensations that they paid out to disabled adults on the basis of a computer tool. And the human rights organization went in, and the health authority couldn't explain the reasons why suddenly the compensations had been decreased from one day to another. So the judge ordered the authority to hand over the entire computer system because they could not explain it. And then afterwards it appeared that there were also several errors. But when it's different, of course, when you use AI systems in a plant to monitor cooling systems. But when it impacts humans, obviously we need decisions. There is a difference between simple, traditional AI models, where you usually can provide these qualifications, where it's easy to follow the logic of the systems, and with complex systems like neural networks or deep learning. But even there, we see that researchers are looking at how can we, maybe with an additional layer of explanation, try to give such transparency about the logic behind the system. The last principle is the one of, accountability, and that is, of course, the fact that humans should be around, and that those persons that are behind AI systems should have responsible processes and principles in place to make sure that they respect the values and the norms. And that brings me perfectly to my next slide, which is the way we have organized this within Microsoft. We have in the US an ITER committee, AI Ethics Research and Technology Committee, and they have 7 working groups which try to look at each of those questions and to come up with internal guidance, and sometimes even already external guidance as well. For example, we have published guidance on chatbots. Is this perfect? No, of course not. We are learning. This is learning by doing, but it's important to have such a process in place that obliges you to make you think about those things. And are we the only ones to have that in place? No, obviously not. Other large tech companies have also such principles and such processes in place. And I see that also Belgian companies are starting to have these. And I just made a very quick comparison because later today, Nathalie Smuha from the European Commission will be speaking here, and she will present the European guidelines on AI and ethics. And they have come up with a set of 7 principles, and it's very much very, very similar. So you see that companies may have slight differences. Some have 4, some have 5, some have 6 principles, but all in all, we speak about the same things. And then I think I've been maybe speaking a little bit too much about ethics, you may think, so you may wonder, well, is there that a role for regulation also, or is she just speaking only about ethics? No, there is also a role for regulation. For example, some regulation is already in place, like on privacy, and for other aspects, we are currently pleading for regulation. For example, on facial recognition, we are pleading for an appropriate framework. But it will depend on case to case. We have earlier mentioned the need for transparency, the need for inclusiveness. It's very different from one sector to another. You cannot just have a one-size-fits-all regulation. AI in justice is something very different from AI in factories, where you may not need all these principles about inclusiveness. So it's very different, and there is no simple solution. But we think it's very important that we think about it together, academia, government, business, and civil society. So that is why we like very much events as those of today, and we support also very much the initiative of the European Commission. Now maybe, I think I have 2 minutes left, so I can do my last slide. To finish on a positive note, 2 weeks ago, we had at Microsoft a speaker from Finland. She's called Linda Liukas. She's a software engineer, nothing to do with Microsoft, but she also writes children books on technology, and she works a lot with children to make them acquainted with technology. And she has these workshops with kids, and where she asks them a lot of questions. Now, I had to take a picture, so I know a little bit the text. So she asked, what is technology, to the kids in her workshop? And I thought the answer was very nice. One of the kids had written, technology is electricity that moves. It is used to play. I use it to have a conversation with my mom. We have a WhatsApp app, and people, what is it more? People use technology. So a very positive note that I thought fit well with the title of this event. Thank you.
Our next and last speaker of this session was an advisor of President Obama. He's a professional in machine learning and artificial intelligence, a graduate of MIT, and he designs analytic solutions for the Fortune 500 companies. So please give him a warm welcome, because he will be speaking about eliminating bias in the deployment of machine learning. I'm speaking about Stephen Brobst. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to talk to you this morning about what I think is the biggest issue that's inhibiting the sustainable, productive use of artificial intelligence in our society, in all societies. And that is the issue of bias. Unfairness introduced in algorithms that can impact every aspect of our lives. Our healthcare, the products that get recommended to us, every aspect of our lives. It's interesting that in the previous speakers, they were worried about the 30% of the people that didn't understand what was AI. I'm actually worried about the 66% that said they understood, but in reality, they have no idea what it is. Okay? Most CEOs, most CFOs, most people in general society have no clue, although they talk about it all the time. They think AI is some kind of a magic, right? The reality is that AI is not magic. AI is math. AI is math. Deep learning, and I'm going to focus more specifically on deep learning, it's AI math. So the idea is, theoretically, when we bring math into the decision making, we should be eliminating bias, right? You remember the old days, maybe you don't because there are a lot of young people in the audience, but you know, when my parents got their first mortgage, they had to walk into a bank branch They dressed us kids in our best clothing ever, right? And we sat down with the branch manager, and that branch manager would interview us and try to decide if we were a good, wholesome family and that my parents were going to repay their mortgage. It was a very qualitative decision based on the opinion of that branch manager of whether we would pay back the mortgage or not. Do you think there's bias in these kinds of decisions? Do you think that if in the 1960s, a single woman with kids walked into that branch manager's office, was making the same salary as my parents were making, would she have gotten the mortgage? Probably not, right? There's all kinds of bias in that process. So by introducing mathematical rule-based systems, we can eliminate the bias, right? Isn't that a wonderful thing, right? Now remember that AI algorithms and deep learning specifically, it's not always right. It's based on statistics. Statistics are never always right. It's a matter of, can we be more right than wrong, right? And so the idea is, using multi-layered neural networks, we can continue to learn, we can continue to get smarter, right? But by introducing these mathematical algorithms, have we truly eliminated the bias, right? So I've just given the example. When we replace the branch manager making the decision with algorithms, mathematics, data influence decisioning on who gets the mortgage, how many people think that we reduce bias by introducing those mathematical algorithms? We definitely reduce bias. How many people think we eliminated bias? No, 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 we did not eliminate bias, right? So the problem here is, yes, we can improve, but once we improve to the next level, we need to continue to get better and better and better. We can't just stop, right? And so we do not eliminate bias by moving from human-based decision-making to mathematical decision-making. Because the mathematics actually have bias in them introduced by humans. Math doesn't have bias. Humans have bias. Humans construct the mathematical equations. Humans select the data used in the training sets to derive those mathematical equations. There's an American mathematician, Cathy O'Neill, who wrote a book called Weapons of Math Destruction. You should read this book if you're in this field, right? So she talks about how very often these algorithms have built-in bias, but they're trapped inside these black boxes that are opaque to most people. And the biases are now hidden, at least when the branch manager denied someone, you knew there was bias there. But people have this false belief that because mathematical equations are making the decisions or making the recommendations, that now the bias is gone, and it's not correct. It's absolutely not correct. So when we look at the critical success factors for long-term sustainable adoption of artificial intelligence in our society, its lack of transparency is a problem, and bias is a problem. If you talk to the World Economic Forum and the sort of results and studies that they've done, these are the two things that are the biggest problems. It's not, do we know how to do the math? Do we have enough computation? Does it economically make sense? Yes, all those things have to be true, but those are really not the issue. AI algorithms are biased. There are more than 180 different kinds of biases that have been identified in human decision-making. Not all, but many of them get translated into AI algorithms. And it's the responsibility of the people in this room as thought leaders in data science to attack this problem head on, to take some responsibility and make sure that we're not introducing biases. Unfairness based on gender, religion, ethnicity, sexual preferences, age, these often get embedded in AI algorithms as bias. And this is a problem. Now, when I say get embedded, this bias does not originate in the AI algorithms. It originates in the humans. Math doesn't have bias. Humans have bias. Right? Humans construct the math that introduced the bias. Right? Now, I think that in many cases, people get a little bit confused between variance and bias. If an algorithm does not produce the correct answer all the time, it doesn't mean that it's biased. We're using statistical algorithms. They are never going to produce the correct answer all the time. That's the nature of statistics, right? Anybody who says, you know, I'm a data scientist and I built a model that 100% of the time predicts which customers are going to defect in the next 90 days, I know that model is broken. I know that they've included in the training set some variable that says the customer has already left. Right? This kind of thing happens all the time. I get shown these models with perfect prediction. They are always broken. Perfect prediction is not a reality. Right? But there's a big difference between variance and bias. So in the bottom left-hand picture, you've got low bias and low variance. That is a perfect model. We hit the target every single time. You're probably not going to build one of those. Right? You want to build it as close as possible? We can get better and better. The reality is you don't hit the target all the time. So here we have low bias, but we didn't hit the bullseye every time. But there was no systematic error. Bias is when there's systematic error. Bias is when I'm always going to the bottom left, and that dimension might be age or gender or something like that. That's when you got a problem. Right? Of course, we would like to introduce more accuracy into our models. We would like to reduce variance. And I think actually computer scientists, mathematicians, we spend a lot of time developing algorithms and refining algorithms and making them better and reducing variance, and that's great. That's what we should be doing. But actually, to me, bias is worse than variance. Yes, of course we should make the algorithms better. Yes, of course we should reduce variance. But bias is unfair error. Variance is error, but at least it's fair, right? It's kind of random error, right? So what I want to do is focus on specifically how do we think about reducing unfairness in the algorithms that we're producing. So the conclusion I want you to get from the first part of this discussion is that, you know, this bias does exist, and you can say, no, there's no bias in my algorithm. We did not include in any of the features that we used gender or age or ethnicity or religion. We didn't include any of those features. Well, you know what? I can tell by which web pages you clicked on with extremely high accuracy what is your gender or what is your ethnicity. So there's correlation in the data. Even if you eliminated those, you know, dangerous variables like gender and religion and so on, I can derive those things very, very easily. Even your postal code in most cases will tell me your ethnicity, right? I don't even have to get sophisticated and look at your clickstream data to figure out those things. So correlation in the data means that, you know, the bias is not necessarily obvious. That you actually introduce bias based on data that you thought was perfectly fair data to be used in sort of the prediction can in fact introduce bias. This has become a much bigger issue with deep learning. in traditional machine learning, where the mathematics were largely linear in nature, we could kind of understand, and you can look at the equations, and you can figure out, well, actually there is a built-in bias here with this coefficient on this variable and so on. With deep learning, most people have no clue what's going on. And by the way, as soon as you figure out what's going on because of the learning, it's changing all the time anyway. In academic circles, there's a conference that was introduced last year called FAT. Fairness, accountability, and transparency. There were thousands of people that showed up to this conference, right? The issue is not how to make our AI algorithms more accurate. Of course we want them more accurate, but I want them more accurate without introducing bias. So the sustainability and the use of AI requires fairness to all people. That means reducing bias. Now, this has already been recognized. It is illegal to have bias in your AI algorithms. GDPR says it. In California, where I'm from, CCPA, the California Consumer Protection Act, says it. Even New York City has a law that says bias in AI algorithms is illegal. That's great to put that in law. It's completely unenforceable. They give no direction of how it is that you're going to measure bias or identify bias. It's easy for politicians to make such a law. Completely unenforceable. Good for some sound bites with the press, not very useful in the real world. In fact, there's discussions that this is so complex, we will need AI solutions in order to monitor for bias in AI solutions. There's a little bit of a problem in that reasoning, right? Yes, I love recursion. I'm a computer scientist, but we do get into trouble when we, do these kinds of things. In GDPR, in Article 22, I think there's two interesting things, right? One is you have the right to have a human in the loop. So in other words, if you're not getting the transparency that you need, if you're not understanding why, for example, the payments for the disabled went down over some period and so on, you have a right to a human in the loop, someone that, to explain, to be involved in decision making and so on. And for very important decisions, I actually am not a big fan of AI as artificial intelligence. I prefer to use the term augmented intelligence. I like a human in the loop. Humans also have bias, but they have different biases. If you, for example, give an X-ray image of someone's lungs to a doctor, they will accurately predict pneumonia in that patient about 96% of the time. No one is perfect. Right? But this is an expert radiologist, a doctor. If you give it to an AI algorithm, deep learning, mathematics, we'll predict it with 98% accuracy. So that's great. Actually, the AI algorithm more accurately predicts the pneumonia than the doctor. So they say, great, I want my doctor to be an AI program. But actually, if you use the AI program to identify the most likely cases of pneumonia, and then you give it to a doctor to look at it, and then again, you've narrowed the set down, so you've reduced the amount of work for the doctor by a lot, you get a 99.5% accuracy. So do you want the human doctor, or do you want the AI software, or do you want both? The answer is clearly both. Right? Human in the loop is not practical in all scenarios, but it's very practical for very important decisions. And transparency, or explainability of decisions reach, is part of eliminating bias, because the more transparency you have, the more ability you have to question what's going on and make improvements, et cetera, et cetera. And this has actually been present in French law since the late 1970s. So it's not a new concept to have these requirements, but it's becoming more important because AI is becoming more pervasive, in decision making in our lives. So my claim is the mathematics are not inherently biased. It's actually the data that you use to create the AI algorithms. And when I say you, I mean you humans, right? It's the data that influences the mathematics and how those algorithms get constructed. And so we need to pay more attention to the data supply chain used to create the training sets that ultimately drive what do the mathematical algorithms produce when they work on real data and real decision-making scenarios. So there are different kinds of bias. We don't have time to talk about all the different scenarios, but selection bias is one of the big ones. What data does the data scientist use in order to produce the training set? Where do they get the data? They got to get it from somewhere. Where they get the data from can definitely introduce bias. If I work at a university as a data scientist, and I'm doing research on, identifying some medical condition, and I'm getting a bunch of data from my university medical center, is there bias in the demographics of the students who go to most universities? Absolutely. They tend to be younger. They tend to be of certain ethnic backgrounds. Gender these days is usually pretty okay, but there's bias no matter where you get your data from, and you have to recognize those biases in the data set, and you have to account for that. Which observations to include and exclude from the data set. These are all issues that impact the quality of the algorithms that you produce. How much data you have. If you're using relatively simple machine learning with linear mathematical models and you got 100,000 observations, that's maybe okay. If you use 100,000 observations to train a deep neural network, you're in deep trouble, right? You are not going to have sufficient data in order to adequately identify underrepresented populations or occurrences of certain events. It's a big problem. This is a funny example that I like to show. This is a Tesla car driving on autopilot using deep learning AI algorithms. Very cool self-driving car technology. This car drove into the back of a parked fire truck. How could that have happened? Well, when you're training self-driving cars, fire trucks in the US, these are very erratic. They drive through intersections and they swerve in and out. So you don't want to train cars based on those driving habits. So they excluded the fire truck data from the training set. So when the car, saw a fire truck, didn't know what to do, bam, right into the back, right? So the selection of the data and the selection of what to exclude from the data had an impact on the performance of the algorithm. Stability bias. Data scientists, like all humans, they don't like change. I've got my favorite data set. I know how to use it. Don't bother me. It's working. It's been working for me for decades. This is no good. Right? That means you're making no progress. And by the way, it's not just the inertia of the data scientist. Regulators create inertia because if you change anything, the regulator is going to do a full audit, take you through a 6-month process. If you're a bank or a healthcare company, you won't get that new algorithm approved for 6 to 12 months. So we've got stability bias built into the system. Cost, time pressure, human resistance to change. All this is a problem in creating accurate models for prediction. And by the way, the world doesn't stay the same. When new healthcare procedures are developed, but you've trained your algorithms on what happened in the past, they don't have visibility to the new healthcare procedure. So they're going to recommend this procedure because in the historical data, there is no new procedure that just got invented. We need to continually feed new data in and reinvent and learn. And labeled data sets are really hard to come by. So we need to move much more towards unsupervised learning and reinforcement learning in order to be successful. We heard earlier from Microsoft on the biometric data. There's all kinds of biases in biometric data. Right? The African-American example was mentioned. One of my favorite examples is a Nikon camera, which, by the way, Nikon is a Japanese company. It has a special feature that identifies when people are blinking. So it says, do you want to retake the picture because somebody in the picture was blinking? And it has an unfair bias to retake the pictures when there are Asians in the picture because of the shape of the eye. It looks like they're blinking to the algorithm, right? And what I wondered is, where was that algorithm developed and where was the training set? I'm pretty sure the training set didn't come from Japan. Probably this happened in Silicon Valley, right? So the source of the data makes a big, big difference. Accuracy of speech recognition, it's great that you can do, speech recognition for French speakers. My best friend from Canada, her native language is French. No chance because it's Québécois. No chance, right? So there's all kinds of biases. And these biases can reinforce themselves. Right? You build this recommendation engine, and the recommendation engine says, well, people with this demographic like to buy our product, so we recommend the product to us, and then they buy it, of course, because you recommended it, and said, oh, those people like to buy our product, so we'll recommend it more and more, and you'll ignore other marketplaces. The biases feed on themselves. And there are lots of examples of this in crime prevention and recommendation engines, et cetera, et cetera. This is one example. This is actually from Amazon. It's a real example, real data. Right? So Amazon launched something called Amazon Prime, which means you get delivered your product within 24 hours. But of course, they couldn't launch Amazon Prime across the whole US all at the same time. The logistics of doing that are very, very difficult. Right? So they had to choose which are the communities that they're going to launch into first. So they're going to launch in the communities that buy lots of Amazon stuff. So they did the analysis, and this is for Atlanta, which is a pretty big city in the southeast of the US. And when you look at where they choose to launch Amazon Prime, it is highly biased towards Caucasian population, not black population. So they can say, well, it wasn't. We didn't put, Caucasian versus black in the variables that we used to do the prediction. We didn't do that. It was fair. We just used purchase habits and postal codes and so on. Well, yeah, but if they have been selling over many years to a certain demographic, then of course, because the recommendation engine been biased and so on, it just feeds on itself, right? And so there are actually hundreds of years of bias built into the data that leads you to this kind of situation. So I'm not saying Amazon is a bad company or they're doing bad things on purpose and so on. There are hundreds of years of bias built into the data. It's interesting, there's a proposal by a guy named Bill Howe, who's a professor at University of Washington, that we should, create the training sets and sort of create essentially biases in the training set to reflect the world that we would like to have versus the world that we have today. But that introduces all kinds of problems. Who gets to decide the world that we would like to have, right? I was doing this speech in Germany, and they were very unhappy with this kind of discussion, right? So there's a lot of trickiness in these scenarios. Again, the AI solutions reflect human bias. This is an image recognition program giving results on identifying things in a kitchen. And it did very well distinguishing between a spatula and tongs and other kitchen instruments, but distinguish between males and females, not so well. Because again, in the kitchen, the bias is towards, well, those should all be females in the kitchen, right? So males were incorrectly identified as females because there's bias. This is a problem. Now, we can do things to fix that, right, by changing the distribution and the frequency of, you know, how often males versus females appear in the training set, even though that might not reflect what's really happening in the kitchen. So use different kind of sampling techniques to address this issue. Right? So in the end, the algorithm is only as good as the data that you use to train it, so we need to pay more attention here. So how do you minimize the impact of the prediction era? Use stratified sampling, right? This is a very well-known, very simple statistical technique to help eliminate bias. Analyze the missing values that you have in your data set, and is there systematic error, is there systematic bias in the missing variables? This is very often a source of bias in your training sets. But most importantly, standardize processes, create templates for deployment. You must standardize, because as soon as you don't standardize, there's too much room for things going off the rails and not being able to fix them. So standardization is very, very important. When we look at where bias is introduced in the AI solutions, it's how you frame the problem. So for example, if I'm making a music recommendation to you, you think that I'm recommending the song that you would most like to listen to. But my algorithm actually looks at, in addition to the music you like to listen to, what is the royalty that I have to pay to this artist versus the royalty I have to pay to that artist? So you think you're getting the song you would most likely listen to, but actually I'm giving you the most profitable song for me, right? And very often that's not transparent. So how do you frame the problem that you're solving? Is the problem to maximize your listening pleasure, or the problem to maximize my profitability? Very different.
1 minute.
What data gets included? So the data that gets included, right? I can decide that songs with profanity in it are not acceptable, so I'm going to decide that those are not included in the training set. We're going to exclude all that data. I decided that for you, right? For you, the consumer, I decided it. So how you prepare the data matters. In the end, the algorithms are opinions embedded in the code. This is a quote from Kathy O'Neill, who I mentioned earlier, right? Because it's my opinion on what's important, profitability or your listening pleasure. It's my opinion whether you should listen to songs with profanity or not with profanity. Right? So you should have the ability to do an algorithmic audit in your organizations. Do the data integrity check. Define success. Be transparent about what is success. And monitor the accuracy of those predictions. Right? So the bottom line here is, the bad news is AI algorithms did not eliminate all the bias. Mathematics does not eliminate all the bias, right? Artificial intelligence is trying to emulate humans. Humans have bias. We're actually propagating that bias into our AI algorithms. The good news is you can understand them, you can manage them, and it's your responsibility in this room to monitor the performance of your AI algorithms, create challenger teams to make sure that you're not falling to the trap of confirmation bias. So the challenger teams are making sure that, yes, it was developed with integrity and so on. Standardize, templatize, be transparent. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So this event is driven by volunteers, and Stephen Brobst is one of our volunteers. He suggested last year that he wanted to do this keynote, and we're so happy that you volunteered to do this keynote. Thank you very much, Stephen Brobst. For those who came late, there is a Wi-Fi code on the back of your card. It's quite important to get on the Wi-Fi, because you are going to use the app which is on your phone in order to vote for the best startup of the year, or your favorite AI Personality of the Year or the Scale Up of the Year. We want you to use your app as much as possible so that you can start networking and mingle with each other and learn from each other. We've spent a lot of time creating this app, so please use it and give us some feedback at the end. Or using the app, you can also give us some feedback. So this is it for the first part. I would like to thank Els Amper, who was there to introduce all the speakers. Els, thank you very much. Luc Blyaert, who put fire in the room. Tom, who made me understand what human was. Lorelien, who framed the whole concept of AI, ethics, and so on. And Mathieu, who did it flawless this time. You know, every presentation started on time. Thank you very much, Mathieu. So from now on, you have 7 choices. You can decide not to choose and stay here. And then you have 6 alternative workshops of 1 hour. There are some interesting workshops in there. They will start at 11. There is one workshop on which is the AI game, which sounds very interesting to attend. There are other workshops about, you know, the practical implementation of those ethical rules. So take some time, get on the app, choose the workshop you are going to attend, and see you back at 11. Thank you very much.